Hello again, and a very warm welcome to all of you on this reading of You Were Born Rich, which is my mentor Bob Proctor's book that he wrote in 1984, an amazing book that summarized most of the studies that he's conducted over 50, 60 years of research, where he's been researching his mentors at the time. There was Earl Nightingale, who's been researching and been mentored by Napoleon Hill, and who's studied Carnegie's successes as well. So there's been a huge chain of people that have come in to contribute into this book's wisdom. And I've decided I'll be reading it to you over the next few weeks, a chapter at a time or half a chapter at a time, as depending on the size of the chapters. This time we are in chapter 3, of course, and we've been reading about the image maker, and we've been seeing a lot about what the power of the mind really can do. And really, in this chapter, what we'll be digging further into the ideas of persistence as well as the ideas of self-image. And those two ideas are incredibly powerful. And as we go into this, you're going to be seeing that Bob goes into telling us some stories here. So these are Bob's stories, and I'll be reading them to you with his words, his perspective, and then we'll at the end have a little bit of a quick discussion about what that really comes to and how we can interpret this into our lives and to make success work for us. So let's dig right into the reading here, which I've got in front of me on this screen. And as always, if you don't have a copy of the book, you can always contact me, and I will make sure that you do get a copy, a PDF copy. It's free. And by all means, I'm very excited about your comments and your participation. So please just type anything that you want to know or discuss, and we can address that at the end. So we've been reading a little bit about persistence, and he comes up now in this reading with persistence always pays. So here is his story in his own words. A number of years ago, John Cannery, a friend and a business partner of mine, was discussing Hill's chapter on persistence with me. We both seemed to be equally impressed with the importance of this quality, as well as with the necessity of a person having it if they were to reach any worthwhile goal. After a time, and nearing the end of our discussion, we agreed we would read the chapter on persistence once every day for 30 days. I don't have to ask John to find out if this exercise helped him. I already know it did. And the exercise has most certainly benefited me on numerous occasions. There is an interesting story concerning John Cannery, which would be very appropriate to share with you here, since it illustrates both the power of imaging as well as the power of persistence. Although I had known John Cannery for a couple of years, and I had talked to him on many occasions, I certainly did not know him as intimately as I do at the time of this writing. It is important that I bring this up here, as I will be referring back to it shortly. The incident I'm about to relate to took place in 1971. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I had just completed a speaking engagement in Edmonton, Alberta, which is in Canada. When I returned to my room, there was a telephone message for me to call John Cannery in Belleville, Ontario, also in Canada. I returned the call, and after a couple of minutes of small talk, John said it was rather important that he met with me, as he had something he really wanted to discuss, and he preferred not to go into it on the telephone. I asked John to wait, and I looked over my calendar, and as it was packed tight. I was busy, to say the least. Almost every day I had either a seminar or a speaking engagement in a different city in North America. So I explained this to John, and I told him that although I would love to visit, I really didn't know when I could. But John was persistent. So I said, listen, I'm leaving Edmonton for Chicago tonight at midnight. So to get to Chicago, I have to go through Toronto. I'll arrive there at 7 a.m. I have to change terminals, and I leave from the second terminals an hour and 50 minutes later. I'll be happy to talk to you then, although I don't promise I'll be too alert after flying all night. It was also worth mentioning that John had to get up early to drive 125 miles from Belleville to Toronto to meet me at 7 on my arrival. So I remember that all John said was, I'll be there. The next morning, I sat in the office, coffee shop, and I listened to John explain how he wanted to do what I was doing. He wanted to conduct seminars. He wanted also to do what I was doing. So he explained to me that he was prepared to pay the price, whatever it may be. That's a beautiful concept. As I listened, it was like hearing a popular song on the radio. You keep hearing it over and over again. In almost every seminar I conduct, there is a man or woman in a seminar who wants to do what I am doing. I've heard it in Biloxi, Mississippi, Butte, Montana, Los Angeles, New York, Moncton, and Montreal. It was an old tune. Now, here I was in Toronto with a friend who I had already mentioned I did not know that well, and he was asking what he had to do. As I was listening, the same images which I had with the others were flashing through my mind. I was remembering all the traveling and the fear of standing up and speaking in large hotel ballrooms, crowded with people who wanted to get them excited, but who were mentally putting you on trial at the same time, thinking, does this guy really know what he's talking about? Now, in many situations, such as sales convention, you have about 40 minutes from beginning to end to build rapport with a few hundred strangers, get them excited about themselves. The years of staying up late nights, reading, studying, the years of learning by attending seminars all over the continent, the years of working for the next to nothing to prepare oneself to hold the attention of a group of people all day in a seminar. These were the images racing across my mind. It had taken me 11 years to get to this point. But how do you say, no, you'll never do it? When somebody like John asks you, especially the essence of what you teach is, you can do anything. Yet, how can you say yes when everybody you know, with the exception of 2 or 3 others beside yourself, cannot earn a living in the public speaking business unless they are a celebrity? And that's a whole different story. When John Canary finished, I told him what I had told all the others. Yes, you can do it, but it's tough. Make sure you understand that, John. It is tough. You will have to do a tremendous amount of studying because you do not only have to know what to say, but you must also have the answers to 1,001 questions arising as a result of what you are saying. Some of the questions will come from professional people, medical doctors, engineers, and lawyers, who in most cases know exactly what they're talking about. So you not only have to be right, but you have to be confident as well, or you'll be discredited with your entire audience, and that only has to happen a couple of times and you're out of business. So not only do you have to study these ideas, but you have to use them as well, or there will be no conviction in your talks. It is next to impossible, for example, to have a sick person teaching health. So you have to develop showmanship and voice control, and on it goes. In short, John, for everyone who makes it, 1,000 fail miserably. Usually, when this is explained, the person says they still want to go ahead, but you never hear from them again. Now, John was no exception in one sense, but he still wanted to go ahead. However, in every other way, he was an exception. I did see him again. I told him what to read, what to do, and how to read it, and he did it. John read hundreds of books. He devoured them. He narrated them into tapes and then played the tapes in his car. At his own expense, he followed me all over the country, and he sat in hundreds of seminars. He wrote thousands of pages of notes and studied them diligently. Finally, I would have him open and close the seminars. Then he would conduct part of the seminar himself. In the beginning, he was full of fear. He was soaking wet. Sometimes he would be so worried about what the audience would think of him that he would forget everything he knew. And as you know, an audience can be very cruel. But despite all of this, he continued. Now, keep in mind, this was costing him money. He was not being paid. John Canary helped build an image of himself doing what I was doing. And he would not quit. He was persistent, and it worked. It always has, and it always will. Today, he has earned the respect of many of the world's largest corporations. He has spoken in almost every major city in North America. He has also earned more in one day than he was earning in a year when I first met him. So, if somebody with numerous degrees on their name tells you image making and persistence don't work, just look John Connery up and ask him. He will tell you, I know you can do it because I did it. That's John Connery. Philip Nicola, a minister in Santa Ana, California, preached a sermon on a similar idea one Sunday that I was fortunate enough to hear when I was living there. He said, keep your mind on a higher image rather than a lower concern. I realize that it is not always an easy thing to do, but it sure pays great dividends for the person who develops the mental strength to do it. And that is exactly what it takes, mental strength. Build your image now and develop the mental strength to hold it. And I can assure you this is not easy. A number of years ago, prior to Napoleon Hill's death, Earl Nightingale condensed and narrated Think and Grow Rich, which is a book by Napoleon Hill, onto a long play record. At the end of the record, Mr. Hill comes on to close the record. He says, verbatim, and now I stretch out the hand of friendship through time and space. Let me remind you not to go searching for opportunity in the distance, but to reach out and embrace it right here where you are. Another author, Wallace Wattles, says, this thinking stuff permeates and penetrates the entire universe. Now, they're both telling us the same thing. So build your image now right where you are. Build it now and let the remaining pages in this book strengthen the image. You don't even have to try. Just let the image of a more prosperous you float to the center of your consciousness. It's already here, so let it appear. For many years now, I've been very aware of the power that flows through you to accomplish good in your life when you hold the proper image in your mind. And this great truth has been responsible for many wonderful things happening in my own life. Moreover, I have also seen numerous examples of what a proper image will do in the lives of other people. And here comes another beautiful story. It's Paul Hudsey's story. I would be remiss if I conducted this chapter without sharing Paul Hudsey's story with you. It all began when I received a phone call from Charlie Beck, who was the Vice President of Sales for the Southwestern office of the Prudential Insurance Company of America in Houston, Texas. He invited me to speak at the company's regional business conference to be held in Toronto, Canada. He explained they had 4 different regions, and each different region was coming up for 3 weeks to the conference. This meant that they wanted me to work in Toronto for approximately 12 days. Now, although I was living in Los Angeles at the time, Toronto was my hometown where I grew up. My family and my friends were still there, so I naturally found the idea appealing to me. But I asked Charlie how long I could have on the program, and he said about an hour. I think it's worth mentioning at this point that I have not as yet learned to teach anyone much in 1 hour. And I told him so. So I explained that if he would give me 2 mornings on the program with each region, I would be glad to come and do the job for him. I wanted 2.5 hours each morning. Charlie's southern accent was interrupted by a real deep bell laugh as he explained that he had never done anything like that in 100 years of history of the company. Nobody had ever done that. All of the executives had taken part in the program, so they never gave anyone that much time. However, I stood firm. I gave him the name of a couple of other vice presidents in his company with whom I had worked, and I suggested that he call him to find if my idea had any merit. But as I hung up the phone, I did so rather reluctantly because I really wanted that job. I must admit that I was somewhat surprised, therefore, when one of Charlie's aides phoned me back to say that they were going for it. But I was given 2 mornings in the program. I made up my mind right on the spot that I was going to leave these people with something special. That if they choose to use it, they would literally change their lives overnight. Not to mention what it would do for their sales records. I was going to speak on the power of an image, or to be more specific, the power of a self-image and the benefits of holding a positive one. At the conclusion of the program for one of the regions, a gentleman came up to me and said it was imperative that he talk to me. He said he had a problem and he felt I had the answer to the problem because he was impressed with me and the ideas I had explained during the seminar presentations. There were approximately 200 people in each of these conventions. I explained to this man, many of the people wanted to talk to me, but I didn't have time to talk to everyone individually since I was only one person. So I explained to him I had another appointment and I had to leave immediately to be there on time. Still, he was persistent. So I agreed to meet him the following morning in the coffee shop for breakfast. Now, I can remember our meeting as if it were yesterday. The two of us sat down just inside the door of the coffee shop at the Hyatt House Hotel in Avenue Road. As soon as we sat down, he started talking. He informed me that he had to tell me something about himself so I could understand his problem. He did not want me to think that he was bragging, but it was necessary for me to have this information. So he began telling me that he was a good man, and I already knew that about him just by looking at him. I could feel it about him. He then went on to explain that he worked for the Prudential for more than 20 years. He'd been in management for all but 2 of those years, and he concluded by saying, "I'm a good manager." Next, he stated that he had a good record, good people, and he was well respected by the executive staff of the company. No sooner had he uttered those words, and Charlie Beck and Dick Merrill, the senior vice president from Houston, came walk in. They came over to a table, congratulated Paul on his year, exchanged a few words with us, and then went on to their table. Paul and I sat down and resumed our conversation. He said they meant what they said. I knew it was true. It wasn't mere flattery. It was sincere, merited compliment for Paul had received from these 2 major senior executives. Finally, he said, "Now, this is my problem." And so he describes the problem. I run a district office in Wichita, Kansas. Out of over 500 office Prudential has, our office stands in 175th place. Now, he said, that's not bad, nothing to be ashamed of. And it wasn't. It was a fairly good standing. Then he said, my problem, I know we're good enough to be in the top 100, but we're not. Every year I go for it, but I never seem to make it. At that moment, I knew what was the cause of Paul Hudsey's problem. I explained to him that he was letting the sales sheet dictate the image he was holding in his mind. He saw himself as being number 175. And he was doing his utmost to move into the top 100. He worked hard, he worked with his people, and he explained previously he had good people. I showed Paul that it was imperative to see himself in the top 100. Regardless of what the sales sheet said. In other words, he had to act as if he were already in the top 100. He had to become mentally what he wanted to be on the physical plane. He also had to learn how to communicate his idea to the entire staff. Suddenly, I saw a light go on in Paul's mind. We talked for a while longer, and he explained as much as I could. I explained as much as I could about the mind to him, how it worked, and especially about the power of holding the proper image there. Paul thanked me and for the time I had given him and returned to Wichita, Kansas. As his region moved out of the Hyatt House, another one moved in. But about a day or so later, I received a long-distance call from Wichita. And it was from Paul Hutsey. He wanted to know where I would be holding seminars when the conference were complete. I told him I'd be in Southern Illinois for Prudential's Midwestern home office. He then asked if he could join me and travel with me for 2 or 3 days. I explained to Paul that I already made a deal with Charlie Beck to do our entire series of seminars for the whole of the Southwestern home office. And one of the sites chosen was Paul's town, Wichita. Nevertheless, since we weren't going to be there for at least 6 weeks, he explained that he wanted to join me immediately. So at his own expense, he flew some 600 miles to spend 3 days with me. We went together from Litchfield, Illinois to Sally, Illinois. We spent hours talking as we were driving from one city to another. And he sat in the seminar and took copious notes all day long. In the evening, we would spend more hours conversing. Finally, Paul returned to Wichita and started to apply these ideas. Specifically, he started to work with a proper image. And as a result, sales started to climb. For some strange reason, Paul's superiors saw fit to move him from Wichita, where he'd been for a number of years, to Pittsburgh, Kansas, where the district office stood in 163rd position. This certainly didn't seem like a very fitting reward for all the efforts he had advanced on the company's behalf. Still, Paul accepted the move as a challenge, and a mere 6 months later, the district of Pittsburgh, Kansas, stood number 11 in the entire Prudential Insurance Company. That's a big leap. Each year, Prudential recognizes the top 52 districts, which is the top 10%, by awarding them a citation. The Pittsburgh district had not had a citation in 9 years. But just a short 6 months after Paul Hutsey took over the helm, they were in the top 2%. Just 2 years later, they missed the number 1 spot by a matter of a few percentage points. Today, Paul Hutsey is Vice President of Sales in Houston, Texas for the Southwestern Territory. Clearly, he is a man who learned well the awesome power of the image held in the mind. Now, if you were to talk Paul Hutsey to Paul Hutsey today, he would be very quick to tell you that he will never let present results dictate the image that he holds in his mind. Rather, he holds the image of what he wants and then acts as if he already has it. Paul Hutsey is, without question, one of the best examples you'll ever find when it comes to the subject of building an image in the mind and then executing it. He has become a serious student of the mind, and I'm happy to count him amongst my good friends. Understand this: you could be doing precisely what Paul Hutsey had been doing all those years. So if you are, then make up your mind right now to do what I've suggested you to start doing. Start right where you are. Build the image of what you want, and then act as if you've already received it. Expressed somewhat differently, act like the person you want to become. As for Goethe, the German philosopher, once wrote, "Before you can do something, you must first be something." As you finish this chapter, lay the book down and then become very relaxed. Let creative energy fill your consciousness and then mold it into an image of yourself in a much more abundant state of life. See yourself already in possession of what you previously only dreamt of. Become extremely conscious of the truth that your entire being is not only filled with, but also surrounded by the original substance all images are made of. So, do not just keep reading page after page of the book without acting on suggestion, which I have been giving to you. In the introduction of this book, and then again in the first chapter, we emphasize the fact that no amount of reading or memorizing will make you successful in life. It is the understanding and application of wise thought which counts. Understanding and application are the keys which will unlock the door to a truly abundant life. It would be very tempting for you to flip from one page or idea to the next, thinking, "Oh, I know this, I know that." However, let me remind you, it makes no difference how accurately you can parrot back these concepts. In fact, you might even be able to recite them verbatim. Nevertheless, if you're not witnessing the results in your own life, of the good that you desire, you simply do not understand the power and, in fact, the necessity of acting on these ideas. Therefore, make the time right now, this very minute, to build the image in your mind of yourself already in possession of prosperity. Write a brief description of your image on a card, carry it in your pocket, and read it every day, a number of times, until the image fills your consciousness. Now begin your written statement in the following way. I am so happy, I now might see myself with, and then write it out in present tense. In an updated version of that, we now say, I'm so happy and grateful now that, because it adds the component of gratitude. So Bob concludes this chapter, chapter 3, saying, be good to yourself. Treat others to the very best life has to offer. Remember, quality is not expensive. It's priceless. What a beautiful chapter. So my main takeaway before we move into chapter 4, which is coming again next week, my main takeaways from here are really very simple. We talked a lot about persistence, and that's really the key. If you look at Sir Edmund Hillary, how he climbed Mount Everest, he didn't make it the first time, he didn't make it the second time, but it didn't stop him from coming back for the third time when he did make it. It's the same with Paul Hutsey. It's the same with the stories that we learned here in chapter 3 from everyone. Your persistence will pay off because persistence leads to a focus on an idea. And when you focus on one idea and you put that idea into your mind and you really see it, you feel it, that idea has to come into existence by absolute law. So we can't deny the fact that we are all operating by law. The universe operates by natural laws. Respecting and understanding these laws will be the key to success. And one of the most important things we've seen here in Paul Hutsey's story is if you can see yourself in that situation already, then you're already halfway there. And you just need to repeat and give that more and more and more energy, that universal energy that's around us, that's shaping our thoughts, also shapes the images we create with our thoughts. And these images are very powerful. And it's the very same images that will transform into the emotions and the feelings, and that will turn into your behavior, which will make you to go and get these things. Now, there's a big misconception here when we talk about how we will be shown the way. And I think this is something I would like to clear up. I think it's still coming in chapter 4, but I wanted to bring that up because people don't seem to think that they have to do this themselves. It's not that somebody else brings anything to you. You have to create your future. But it is through the images and the emotions that you have that you will be finding the awareness to develop the ideas that will get you towards exactly where your image is taking you. So it's very important to understand that these ideas are actually around you all the time, and we just don't take them in our state of awareness. But in a higher state of awareness, you're going to take in a lot new things that have always been there that you're suddenly going to see. And as soon as you recognize that you've always seen these things, it's almost funny because it's just your state of awareness. So what this book is intending to do, what we're trying to do here, is to raise your awareness to the fact that you have incredible power, and that if you study, and that's what Paul Hutsey did, that's what every one of the characters described in the book here did. The moment they start studying the mind, the awareness rises, and the awareness is the key for you to see the solutions that you need to apply in order to get to where you want to. The other thing is that I really love about this chapter, and I really, really, really think this is something I had to learn the hard way, is there is no competition. There is only creation. Competitiveness, when it comes to the idea that there's a limited amount of something, that either you or I will get it, is a very limiting idea, and it always leads to disintegration. But the idea that there is absolute abundance leads to the idea that you can create your own. You can create your own destiny. You can create your own luck. You can create your own life. And there's always going to be enough resources. This is probably one of the biggest ideas that I had to learn. Because coming from a very rational-based mindset in my previous occupation as a pilot, it dawned on me that there is a complete new way of thinking when it comes to your life. Of course, in the pilot work, that kind of thinking is extremely appropriate. But as soon as you're thinking about, let's say, life as a whole, you need to realize that you can create. And creation is the total opposite of competition. It's a really beautiful concept that you can create through your study, you can create your well-being, and you can create the future that you really want. You just have to develop enough energy in your mind, enough focus to hold a certain image of what you truly want. And it starts with knowing what you want first. That's a whole different story by itself. Most people don't really know what they want. They kind of think they know what they want, but very often it's what other people have shown them what they want, or what society has shown them, and they go for stuff that doesn't really resonate with them. Okay, so if you know what you want, then you're a step ahead. Now you can build that image in your mind and use that focus, that energy that is all around us. Concentrate on that image, feel it. Paul Hutsey has shown us how it's done. He saw himself as in the top 100. When he learned that concept, he managed to break out of this cage that he was in, that said I was 175. He applied a new image. In fact, from what I understood, he doctored the sheets and created a fake image for him to see a fake reality of him being in the top 100. And there's a couple of tricks like that I've also learned, and I find them amusing. And I'm yet working to see if they actually work. But you can try that. Like your bank statement, you can, create a fake bank statement that says that you have a different amount of money in your bank than you do, and play with that idea. So give your subconscious a fake impression of your already existing wealth. And to leave all this, before you can have something, you must first be something. I love Goethe's quote. He's put it all into perspective, because it all has to happen in your mind. And when it's in your mind, you become that person, and then the having is an automatic effect of the cause of you being. On that note, I enjoyed reading this chapter. I like the idea of self-image a lot. And I will be continuing on next week with chapter 4, where we're going to be looking into let go and let God. And we'll dig into that concept a lot more as from, I suppose, Tuesday. And I'll be broadcasting the schedule again. Have a lovely day. If you want a copy of the book, get hold of me. I'll email it to you. Have a look at my website at platinum-mind.com, where you get to see some of the work we do here, and where some of these concepts are being applied into real mentorship, into real concepts that are taking you by the hand through a system that has proven to work. Made by Bob Proctor. It's been proven to work by thousands of people on this world, this planet, and it's still working today. And many people are going through this at this time. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you soon.